Hi everyone, today is May 1st, so I thought it would be a good time to film my first ever TBR. Honestly, I probably should have done it before May 1st so I could post it on May 1st, but I'm not that organized, so it didn't happen. First off, I want to try reading all the books that have been nominated for Hugo Awards. I mean, I'm not going to read them all this month, but I'm going to start reading them this month. The Hugo Awards get voted on at the end of July, or maybe it's the beginning of August, so I should try to get through at least a couple of them a month until then if I want to get through the list. So I've actually read one of the books on the list already. I read it just in the last few days. It's Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. This was actually the book that I was the least excited about from the entire list because the cover and the description really freaked me out. But I actually unexpectedly totally loved it. I'm going to try to do a review as soon as I can. But hopefully that's a good sign if the book that I was the least excited about turned out really awesome. I mean, that's gotta be a good sign for the rest of the list, right? I'm not really a fan of short fiction, so I'm gonna skip those lists, and maybe if I finish all the novels, I'll go on to the other awards that aren't Hugo's that are given at the same time for young adult fiction and for new authors. The first Hugo nominated book I'm going to read this month is A Memory of Empire by Arkady Martine. Most of the books I'm going to be talking about today I have on ebook from the library right now. I'll be reading them on my phone, and usually what happens is if I really like a book, then I'll go ahead and order a copy. I'm looking forward to the times when, we can all go shopping with reckless abandon and I can go buy more books in person. A Memory of Empire is a debut novel. It seems like it's going to be the first in a series. All I know about it so far, it seems like it's space opera, and the description and some of the comments I saw say that it's a mystery and that it has a lot of really complex world building. So this seems like something that I could potentially be into. Space opera mysteries are a pretty good genre, and in terms of my taste in science fiction, they definitely run more towards space opera than hard science fiction. So just a quick explanation for those of you who might not have heard the term space opera before. Space opera is basically just a term for science fiction that is more on the light side as opposed to hard science fiction, which refers to books that have a lot of actual science or ideas based on where science might go in the future and where those are actually a critical part of the plot. Space opera is more just similar to fantasy in terms of the way the science fiction elements work, basically just more like magic, like it's part of the setting and it's there, but it's not necessarily well explained. I think the term originally came from soap opera, but there's nothing necessarily soap opera-like about something that's called space opera. It's just where the term originated. I'm curious to see what this book is like. I'm not really sure. It seems like something that I could end up liking, but I'm not convinced that it's going to be to my taste. The other Hugo nominated book that I want to read this month is Middle Game by Shannon McGuire. I know that she's actually quite a popular author. I've actually never read anything by her before. I think she writes more in the vein of urban fantasy from what I remember. It seems like Middle Game is a standalone fantasy, so hopefully this will be a good place to start with her work. There are a couple of other books that I'm going to read this month that are continuing series that have already started recently. The first one is Ancillary Sword by Anne Leckie. I read the first one in the trilogy, which is called Ancillary Justice. I really liked it, despite it being more hard science fiction than is usually to my taste. There were things about it that I found a little bit difficult, but there were some really cool elements as well. One of the things I liked was that the dominant culture in this world/society doesn't recognize the concept of gender, and so the main character in their internal monologue just refers to everyone as she, and when they are in situations where they are talking to somebody from a different culture that does have a concept of gender, they are constantly stressed out about having to guess how to gender them in that language and frequently get it wrong. So I thought that was a really cool aspect of world building. The other book that I'm going to read that's continuing a series is A Conjuring of Light by V.E. Schwab. This ends the trilogy that started with A Darker Shade of Magic. I've overall been enjoying this trilogy. It's not the greatest, honestly, but it's quite light and fun. I like the characters well enough. It's pretty fast-paced, and it just makes a nice series to read in between reading heavier things. So I'm hoping, I think the first one was a little bit better than the second one to me, so I'm hoping that this will be like a fun conclusion to the trilogy and something fun and light to read that I know I'll enjoy. There are a couple of books that I'd like to reread this month. The first one of those is Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. So if you guys don't know, the 4th Stormlight Archive book is coming out this November, and I could just reread the other 3 Stormlight Archive books, but I thought, why not just reread the entire Cosmere? It's actually been a couple of years since I read a lot of the books in the Cosmere, so I'm going to start out with Elantris. I think the first Brandon Sanderson book that I ever read was actually Mistborn, and that's generally a pretty good place to start with his work, but Elantris was the first book that he published, and I can't remember if it's chronologically first in the Cosmere chronology or not. I'd have to actually look that up. I'm not that hardcore about all my Cosmere mythology, but either way, I figured it would be a fun place to start, and I haven't read it in a couple years, so I'm looking forward to that. I think it's going to be really enjoyable. I also know he's grown a ton as an author. This book was published probably more than 10 years ago at this point, and there are things that he didn't do so well back then that he's really good at now, including in terms of pacing. I remember with this book, he used to have something that he has since termed the Brandon Avalanche, where everything just comes to a head like 100 pages before the end of the book, and it's just completely crazy for the last section of the book. But still, I'm really looking forward to rereading this one. I think it'll be fun, and I'm looking forward to rereading more Brandon Sanderson after that. Another book I've been thinking a lot about rereading that I think I'm going to go for it is A Golden Compass. So I read his Dark Materials, that's the trilogy, when I was probably middle school or elementary school, around when they were coming out. They were pretty popular. I was not a huge fan at the time, and partly just because I was too cool for anything popular back then. But also, I think I've actually learned since then that Philip Pullman didn't really intend that series for a younger audience, but it got marketed to a younger audience at the time, and I'm wondering if there are things in it that I might appreciate more now that I'm older. I know there are a lot of themes about religion and coming of age and things like that that I might just not have really been in a place to appreciate as like a preteen. I also saw a few episodes of the HBO series and overall really enjoyed them. The TV series kind of wove together things from all 3 books into one chronological plot line, and I'm actually looking forward to finishing the show whenever I get a chance to, because I was using an HBO free trial, so I only saw the first few episodes. I also read the first book in his new trilogy. The first one is a prequel to The Golden Compass, and I actually really, really liked that, and that was another thing that just made me curious to try the series again and see what it's like, and if I appreciate it more as an adult than I did when I read it like almost 20 years ago. The last book that I'm thinking about rereading this month, and I might or I might not, is City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. This book I read, I think, about a year ago for the first time, and I am still totally obsessed with this series. The 3rd one is coming out in June, so I'm still trying to decide if I want to reread the first 2 now, or if I'm just going to wait and read the 3rd one and then maybe reread the entire series after that. I think it's still pretty fresh in my memory, so I'm not worried about needing to refresh necessarily, but I am super, super excited about the 3rd one coming out next month, and I can't wait. So those are all the books that I'm planning to read this month. I might get to a few more if time permits, but those are the ones I'm planning and that I'm excited about. So let me know if you've read any of these and whether you think I'll like them or not.